Hello friends, welcome back to my channel ELS English Literature Studies with Gaur Harpreet. Today I will discuss Odd on Aggression on. This is part 2. If you're interested, you can check part 1 also. So let's get started with today's topic, and before that I would like to discuss John Keats in brief. John Keats is one of the most celebrated poets in the English language. Right, let me use this pen. John Keats is one of the most celebrated poets in the English language, and today I will talk about one of his most celebrated poem, Odd on the Grecian Urn. And his recognition was overshadowed because of more successful poets like William Wordsworth, and he died at the age of just 25 because of tuberculosis, and his reputation quickly rose after his death, right? This poem was written during the spring of 1819 and is also considered as a key member of the Romantic poets of the second generation, including Byron and P.B. Shelley. And if you want to know more about John Keats, then you can check my other videos that are totally dedicated to him. So let's get started with today's topic, and before that let me discuss first stanza and second stanza for my those subscribers who will join me today. So in the first stanza, the speaker stands before an ancient Grecian urn and addresses it. He is preoccupied with the depiction of pictures frozen in time. He says that it is the still unravished bride of quietness, the foster child of silence and slow time. And if you want to know explanation of these poems, you can check my that video. And in the second stanza, he shows us another picture on the urn, right? And he says that in this second stanza, he says that the unheard melodies are more sweeter than the heard ones. And what does it mean? You can check in that video. So let's get started with stanza third, that is our today's topic. Let's read the poem. Ah, happy, happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves nor ever bid the spring adieu. Boughs means branches of a tree and adieu means farewell. The branches will never lose their leaves and they will never bid the spring farewell. They will never say goodbye to spring. And happy melodist unwearied. Unwearied means one who never gets tired, right? And the happy melodist means the happy musician is forever playing his flute songs that are also forever new, forever piping songs forever new, that they will be new forever, right? More happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed. In this stanza, the poet has overused this word happy, happy, and he uses this word because he thinks that the creatures on the urn are happy and everything looks good. The love is forever warm and fresh, and it is on the point of ecstasy, right? Maybe this is the reason that he has overused this word happy, happy. Forever panting and forever young. Panting means out of breath. The lovers are forever young and out of breath with excitement, all breathing human passions far above. The lovers are above human passions. They are at a better place. They are what are these human passions? I will discuss in next these two lines. That leaves the heart high, sorrowful and cloyed. Cloyed means sensation of disgust because of excessive indulgence, right? That leaves a heart high, sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. Human passions make sometimes us worried and tired, right? And passion can make us feel bad, or we can have forehead burning because of this passion and our tongue sticking in our mouth, right? And what does it mean? Let us try to understand this stanza. That this stanza develops the thought that art is higher and nobler than life, and art does not have sorrows and sufferings, right? So nothing can change in the world of the picture on the urn, and this stanza gives us more examples of that. And these are the examples like the tree on the walls will always be green and spring on them will never go. It will be there forever. And all these things of art are above this human passion. passion of love in real life, which sometimes gives us burning forehead and parching tongue, and this passion makes us weary after some time in real life, right? But he's talking about on that all breathing human passions far above these. Young people will remain young forever, all breathing human passion far above, they will be above this human passion, and they will not have a burning forehead and a parching tongue as we have in real life. I hope I have clear make it clear. And then stanza 4 is, who are these coming to the sacrifice? In this stanza, a scene of sacrifice is painted on the other side of the vase. Some people are coming to a sacrifice event of an innocent animal, this heifer, right? Which one will be burnt and will be offered to the gods. To what green altar? O mysterious priest, altar. Altar means the high place where offerings are made to the gods, and this mysterious priest is leading this act to be acted. Leads though that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed. Dressed means dressed, right? And heifer means young cow. The priest, this mysterious priest, is leading a young cow to be sacrificed, and the cow is lowing, means mooing, and the cow's legs are decorated with flower chains. What little town by river or seashore or mountain built with peaceful citadel? A citadel is a fort, and the people in the scene on the urn are imagined to be from little town. Is emptied of this folk this pious morning. What little town by river or seashore or mountain built with peaceful citadel is emptied of this folk this pious morning. The people in the scene are on their way to the sacrifice. Also, their town will be empty forever, and it will be silent forever, right? And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can ever return. Not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can ever return. And the people will move out of the town, and not even a single soul will ever come back, can ever return. Not a single soul will come back to explain what is the reason, that the town is empty, right? So next stanza is stanza 5. This is last stanza. O Attic shape, fair attitude with braid of marble, men and maidens overwrought. Overwrought here means abundantly decorated. Attic means Athens, the capital of Greece, and braid is an interwoven pattern. But here it is in marble, right? The urn is decorated with marble, men and women, and it is abundantly overwrought, abundantly decorated with forest branches and the trodden weed. Amongst green trees, forest branches means green trees and plants under their feet. The silent form does tease us out of thought. Here the poet is talking to the urn, to the quiet urn, silent form, to the quiet urn which doesn't speak, which doesn't challenge our thoughts, right? As doth eternity cold pastoral. Cold pastoral here means frozen time, and eternity means endless time. Pastoral means the sweet, peaceful country life. The speaker or we can say John Keats, or the speaker calls the scene on the urn cold and not sweet. So cold pastoral is a paradox here, and no real passion is going on. The scenes on the urn are frozen, cold pastoral, but they may look sweet and attractive. When old age shall this generation waste, when people who live now will grow old and die, thou shalt remain. Thou shalt remain. Thou is used for the urn. Thou shalt remain in midst of other woe. That you, the speaker says, you or the urn, you will stay there forever in the middle of all kinds of troubles. Then ours a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is, you know on earth and all you need to know. Actually, when we talk about this stanza, in this stanza, the poet the poet says that the Greek urn is a thing of great charm. It confuses us by its perfect silence, right? And he says when the generation of the poet, when on the generation of the poet the curse of old age falls, the urn would remain a friend to man among all types of sufferings, and it will give a message. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, right? And according to Keats, this is the message that we can know and we need to know in this world, that everything ye know on earth and ye all ye need to know. That this is the message he wants us to know. What is the message? That everything which is true is beautiful and everything which is beautiful must be true. I've written here that the poet conveys a message. He wants to convey this message when he says that ye know on earth and all ye need to know, that everything which is true is beautiful and everything which is beautiful must be true. That is the message he wants to say, right? So let me conclude this paragraph, or sorry, this stanza, not paragraph, this stanza, that the Grecian urn passed down through countless centuries. Still it remains the same. It does not age, it does not die. And the human figures carved into the side of the urn are free from time, right? But they are simultaneously frozen in time, cold pastoral. At the same time, they are frozen in time. They do not have to confront aging and death. That is why the speaker says that he talks about forever young man, that your love will be remain forever, and he talks about the foster child of slow time, right? And in this final stanza, the speaker again addresses the urn itself, saying that when his generation is long dead, the urn will still be there, telling future generations what he will tell, that beauty is truth, truth beauty. The speaker says that this is the only thing the urn knows and the only thing it needs to know, right? This is the only message that Keats wants everyone to know, that which is true is beautiful and everything which is beautiful must be true. So friends, this is all about today's topic. I hope I'm able to make you understand this poem. And the ode, this is the ode that takes us away from the world of time to the world of eternity. As I have told in my previous video, that as in Nightingale, right? And this takes us from world of time to the world of eternity, and imagination of the poet passes from the concrete form of beauty to the eternal spirit of beauty. When we go through this poem, what he wants to say, why he uses the urn, because he used this urn because his imagination passes from the concrete form to the eternal spirit of beauty, that is from the finite to the infinite, right? And Keats says that there is no higher knowledge attainable by man than this realization of the infinite in the finite. So friends, this is all about today's poem, in which I think Keats has achieved here a poem of organized effect, and it magnificently balances the claims of both the work of art and breathing human life. So friend, this is all about today's topic. I hope you like the content, and if you like it, please hit the like button, share and subscribe my channel, and if you're new to my channel, please hit the bell button so that you can get notifications for my upcoming videos. Thanks a lot for watching.